Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. When you're doing your conjugate-based max effort on your lower days, you rotate deadlift and squat. Could one potentially do something like this on the upper days with something like a pull-up type day and then a pressing type day? I don't know that I'd necessarily do that unless you really and truly want a specialty in pull-ups or chin-ups. And I think the thing that you need to keep in mind is that there is carryover on squats and deadlifts. In other words, the same muscles are being used. And a lot of people fail to realize that, even though we think of the squat as being a hair more interior dominant and the deadlift being a hair more posterior dominant. When you're running conjugate, the max squat days still help you with your max deadlift and vice versa, because you're still learning to strain using the same basic body parts. A press versus a pull-up is really quite a bit different. It's just something to consider. And also, usually what I tell guys, I mean, you could do kind of what I do to where I rotate right now, a chest press and an overhead press, because there is a degree of carryover, and that's close enough. That's very similar to what we would get with the squat and the deadlift. But you know, when it comes to things like back exercises like that, because most of the time we're not ever going to do those for max effort in a competitive environment, unless you're going to do chin-ups, right? The chin-up contest or something. I don't know that it would be worth using that particular slot for it. Now, if a person was running a conjugate and they legitimately care about their 1 rep max chins and pull-up type strength just as much as their max bench or pressing in general, maybe you could do it. Maybe you could do it. But that would be a little bit more specialized of a conjugate method. I mean, again, it would come down to you saying, hey, what is it that my goals are? I mean, but realistically, for someone who says, well, maybe I really want an awesome max chin-up. Maybe I want to go do a weighted chin-up contest. Okay, you could do that. Just understand that you'll need to, again, gear your training around it, and understand that your max pressing itself may suffer a hair for it. You may be making a little bit of a trade-off. So I would step back and say, what are your goals? Because if your goals are just general strength, or to be a general athlete, I don't think it's necessary, because you're getting pulling with the deadlift days. Right, you are still pulling and using back and stuff on the deadlift days. So it's not like you aren't practicing some sort of pull using your back. So for just general strength, if a person, whether they wanted to not be a power lifter, let's say you were doing it for general athleticism, you still might be better not doing it that way. So it comes down to specifically what it is that you're seeking. But yeah, if you're a person who says, hey, I want an amazing 1 rep max chin up, well, then doing different pull variations on every other week like that may be warranted. But that is for a little bit more specific training, and in which case I'd say go for it. All right, next question. I do intense MMA training 5 times per week, 5+ times. I've been running the conjugate method over 3 days instead of 4, and continuing where I left off the following week. What do you think of the condensed conjugate recommended by Daru Strong? 3 days per week, max effort lower, dynamic effort upper the same day, max effort upper, dynamic lower the same day, repetition efforts and accessory days. Let me know what you think. Here's generally what I do for my people. As of right now, I have one martial artist who runs conjugate. Okay, one martial artist who runs conjugate. I actually have him do exactly what you described in your first post. Okay, he does BJJ. We spread it out over 3 because of his work schedule and other stuff. So that's usually what I would recommend for a lot of guys. If that's what they're going to do all that MMA training or martial arts stuff or some other sports endeavor like that with a pretty high conditioning component that can beat your body up. Spreading your conjugate out, your 4-day over 3 days, and then repeating it. So basically it's a 10-day cycle roughly instead of a 7. So you basically just spread it out. So whatever the last day would have been for this week, you just bump it to the next week. So it would go something like week 1, max effort lower, max effort upper, dynamic effort lower. Then the next week you start with dynamic effort upper, then max effort lower, max effort upper. And then, you repeat that cycle. The other option, I don't like mixing max effort and dynamic together. I don't think that that's ideal. What I would say, your other option, I have someone who really only wants to train 3 days a week. They're an advanced lifter. They do a lot of GPP on their off days, and they're in a weight loss phase on top of it. There's someone who does a lot of conditioning. I don't have them do their DE right now because they're probably better off with rep work. So what I do for them is we do a max effort lower on Monday, max effort upper on Wednesday, and then Friday I do repetition effort full body. And we don't really do a lot of accessories on that because I'm having them bench, box squat, and sumo deadlift all for 5 to 6 reps. For sets, I just have them row afterwards and go home because it's a lot of volume to handle. But their max effort days, we do a lot of accessories, right? They're doing a lot of accessories, good mornings, glute ham raises, tricep work, overhead pressing, all of that stuff, in addition to a lot of ab work and everything else. So they do a lot of volume on their max days. You could do the same thing, though, if you wanted to do 2 max effort days and just do all your speed work on one day. That would also work, right? You could just come in and do speed squat, speed deadlift, speed bench, and then maybe some upper back work and get out on your 3rd day, and then save your other accessory work for the max effort days. And I think that's workable too. I think that's completely workable if that's what you wanted to do and get it done in 3 days. I think you need to play it by feel and see which one works best for you. But a lot of field athletes and football players also use the method that you're using above, and it's the same thing I've prescribed. But I have written programs at this point. I do have 2 different people who have done programs on 3-day concurrent, and that's the 2 different methods I've used. And it seems to be successful. So again, I'd say you need to look at it and think through exactly what you're doing. But here's what I would say. If what you're doing by just spreading the 4 workouts over those other days, if it's working well for you and you're still able to hit PRs while doing this enormous amount of MMA training, continue to do it. It's not broke. Just a thought. All right, next question and last question of the week. Is the mirror going to be the most accurate way of testing body fat percentage? No. Jesus Christ. Even DEXA scans can be off by a few points, and not all machines are equally accurate. But overall, I just want to get lean again where my abs are more visible. Would you say 15% is where they start to be visible? Okay. Here's the problem with the mirror. Anyone who is checking themselves out in the mirror and is actually legitimately concerned with their body fat percentage as some tangible quantity probably has a degree of body dysmorphia. Okay, anyone with any amount of body dysmorphia is psychologically incapable of using a mirror or their own pictures to assess anything on their body. They are completely incapable of doing so. I want that to set in. If you have any degree of body dysmorphia, the mirror will lie to you every time. We can argue about DEXA scans being inaccurate. Do you know why DEXA scans are inaccurate? Because people are stupid. You mess up your own DEXA scans. In other words, if your DEXA scan is not consistent from scan to scan, it's because you're probably a stupid person who wasn't consistent. You didn't think through at all what you were doing. People say, what do you mean? If you're going to do multiple DEXA scans to compare yourself over time, you have to be consistent. In other words, eat the same meal the night before every DEXA scan. If you do 6 DEXA scans through the year, and the first one you ate a pound of steak and 2 large potatoes for dinner before you went to bed that night, that's probably what you should go ahead and eat something very similar the night before every DEXA scan. You should probably do your DEXA scan fasted in the morning so that there's no inconsistency based upon food in your GI tract and no major change in water weight. Okay? Do your DEXA scans at the same time of day. When you do that, they are absurdly pinpoint accurate for the same individual from scan to scan. It's when you do something to disrupt that. And it's not that the fat is misread, by the way. Okay, DEXA scans don't misread your body fat amount. They disread your lean mass amount because of water, glycogen, and food in your gut. They misread your lean tissue. Does that make sense? They don't misread your body fat. It's that if a DEXA scan decides that you have 10 pounds of lean tissue because of fluid and water retention and food in your gut that wouldn't be there under a different circumstance, that will change your body fat percentage because you have 10 pounds extra lean tissue. Or you've dehydrated yourself. Okay, if you have 37 pounds of body fat, that DEXA scan is generally going to read you within half a pound of accuracy on that, no matter what you do. It's going to misread your lean tissue. That's where your margin of error is, and that's where people have to be consistent with what they do on the scans. The mirror is not accurate. Okay, if you want to get accurate, you need to do pictures from 6 or 7 different angles and maybe send them to a well-qualified coach if you want them to assess. Someone who can emotionally detach from how you look. But anyone who cares about their appearance to some extent, anyone who obsesses over their actual physique has some degree of body dysmorphia. Period. You will misinterpret what you see in the mirror. 15% would you say you start to see visible abs? Yeah, that's probably about right. But what's visible? What do you define as visible abs? Okay. Are you talking about what the average person walking down the street calls visible abs, or are you talking about what little bodybuilding twinks think are visible abs? No, to have abs that the physique obsessed guys think is visible abs, you need to be 10%. But if you want to have what the average Joe would say, yeah, I think he's got a bit of a six-pack. You can start to see the six-pack, about 15%. That's about right. Unless you have a tremendous amount of muscle, and it might be a hair higher. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.